Hello there, kia ora, and welcome to this week's news. An historic first occurred during this year's Labour weekend. The official road toll at the end of the weekend was zero for the first time ever. Said Transport Minister Simeon Brown, seen here wondering how long dogs live since Blue's Clues and its revivals have been on air since 1996. Yeah, sorry about that, we'll try harder next time. In Samoa, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, seen here with some British beneficiary from a state housing project, spent time having quite normal conversations with King Charles III and trying not to laugh when Choggum heads of state passed resolutions promising to take action on climate change. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister couldn't find time in his busy schedule of making TikToks and having fancy dinners to visit the site of the submerged Navy vessel Manoa Nui, or visit villages impacted by fuel leaks from the first Navy ship to sink in 70 years, saying, well, it's on the floor of the ocean now, really just a big dining cart for natural sea life. And as you know, we don't do bottom feeders. International fact-checking member, the Australian Associated Press, has called out Education Minister Erica Stanford, seen here showing media how to dance a hula, for making misleading claims to justify cutting a Te Reo Māori language program to reallocate funding for the government's new rushed maths curriculum based on erroneous test data. The AAP found that while Stanford was technically correct in her claims that an independent monitoring report found no evidence the course had improved outcomes for students or in the classroom, they also pointed out that the reason for this was because that was not part of the scope of the report. A spokesperson for Stanford's office backed this up, stating that the reason they could not find the data was because it wasn't there. Not that National Party voters will notice. After all, they keep saying things like National's the party of business and fiscal responsibility, and that's clearly never been accurate, as seen here when looking at data on employment, business liquidations, filled jobs, and job growth from the last 12 months. Drama in Wellington this week as new transport data shows one specific cycle lane outside Parliament had drastically slowed down traffic on the Lambton Quay to Molesworth Street leg of some bus routes, according to the Post, owned by Vision for Wellington member and totally not biased against the council in any way, Sinead Boucher. That actual data, though, shows traffic was slowed by a construction site, a broken traffic light, and maintenance on Tena Cordy Road. After changes to light phasing to compensate, those travelling on buses now have to wait an extra 47 seconds, which have been added to travel time. Said Transport Minister Simeon Brown, it's clear to me that the cycleways on Molesworth and Murphy Street are frustrating with increased congestion on this key arterial route. Because that's what the Post told me to think. NZQA, the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, this week confirmed that all 8 of its permanent staff that support exam centres as part of NCEA exams had chosen to take redundancy or had resigned over the last 12 months. Those roles have been replaced by 7 staff moved from other areas and 4 temporary support staff to ensure the smooth running of exams later this year. Said Education Minister Erica Stanford, seen here wondering if anyone realises that she's the Education Minister and not David Seymour. We want all of our students to do well in exams, and that way we can set them up the foundations for long careers ahead working in sectors like the civil service, where they can worry about being fired and asked to do jobs they're not trained in or qualified for, like organising and running NZQA exams as we make cuts to pay for landlord tax breaks. Changes to the school lunch programs announced by Associate Education Minister David Seymour, seen here trying what has been described as human food for the first time, are raising concerns around the country. The Ministry of Education has confirmed that 75 current providers will have their contracts end in December, leaving up to 2,000 people out of work, despite earlier assurances from Seymour that contracts would continue over a 2-year period, which has led to some suppliers laying complaints with the Prime Minister's office and the Ombudsman. In their place, international company Compass Group, which has had its own controversies, will be taking over. But that could see mass-produced food shipped from places like Hamilton all the way to the west coast of the South Island in the most inefficient undertaking since seeing David Seymour try human food, like a human. Information released this week under the OIA shows that Finance Minister Nicola Willis, seen here telling media to stop, collaborate and listen, ICE is backed with a brand new invention, made her recent decision to demand the re-evaluation of work from home practices for civil servants and public sector workers based on informal conversations with no evidence to back up claims around productivity or the flow-on effects for local businesses, and couldn't name a single business that supports the new directive. At the time of the announcement, Willis maintained data collection was a key step to what was really going on, but That data wasn't actually collected before the announcement, and Willis has not received any official correspondence or had any meetings on the topic before the announcement. When pressed for comment, Willis pointed out that it's written into the coalition agreements that decisions will be based on evidence and seen clearly in policies already implemented, like raising speed limits, loosening smoke-free legislation, revamping freshwater policy, their approach to punitive measures against beneficiaries and criminals, the justification for the rush on the revamped maths curriculum, and putting in an observer at Wellington City Council. The High Court released findings this week that found iwi from the top of Te Waipounamu are owed thousands of hectares of land and millions of dollars in compensation for a land deal struck in the 1830s, which the government did not honour. When asked for comment, Hobson's Pledge founder Don Brash was found in the corner screaming into his pillow. In Hamilton this week, the City Council met to discuss the future of Sovereign Citizen-aligned Lisgun-affiliated councillor Andrew Bidder, seen here realising birds aren't real, after his refusal to accept the findings and outcomes of a recent Code of Conduct complaint process, after he used ableist slurs used to denigrate disabled people. During the process, Bidder was censured and ordered to apologise specifically to organisations that work with people who live with cerebral palsy and other disabilities, and so far has refused to do so, claiming the entire process was corrupt and that he wouldn't apologise or resign if asked to, which is a move the council is considering. Unfortunately, the current law around dealing with problematic elected councillors when they need to be held to account is weaker than the evidence used to remove funding for Te Reo Māori courses by Erica Stanford to pay for maths books, or demand civil servants stop working from home to save the cafes in the CBD. And finally, Wellington icon Quasi is on the move after 5 years sitting perched above the Wellington Art Gallery. The almost 5-metre tall sculpture, that is a combination of artist Ronnie van Hout's face and hand, has been the subject of both praise and derision from locals, calling it kind of creepy and a Lovecraftian nightmare come to life. Quasi will be airlifted on Saturday off the building and is on its way to an undisclosed location in Australia. At the time of recording, the Post is yet to blame Mayor Tory Whanau and the left-leaning Wellington City Councillors for this event, saying there's only so much space we have to print and there's bike lanes to vilify first. And that is this week's news. Here. The links to other things that come at the end of YouTube videos. Those ones there, here.